This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. In a dystopian future, London lumbers around the world, devouring other civilizations. Wait a second, I thought this was a fantasy film. It's Mortal Engines, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. Took a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back with the main episode. If you missed our prequel episode, you can go back and listen to that, where we previewed Mortal Engines and learned a little bit about steampunk. A little bit of a deep dive on the old steampunk.
It was, I don't know if I'd call it a
middle-depth dive on the old steampunk. Dipped our toe in the shallow end of steampunk.
We waited a little.
We waded into steampunk, yes. But you can go ahead and check that out if you missed it. If not, that's fine too. We have, I think, pretty much all of our segments today. Mm-hmm. So let's start with Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
I know we didn't write this down, but we usually do this.
We didn't.
I can just do the movie for people, and then we can talk about how different the book is, where it is different. So spoilers abound, but if you haven't seen Mortal Engines, or if you haven't seen it recently and you don't recall what happens, let me give you a little brief rundown. I think it'll be pretty easy to sum up in general, because it's a lot of things happen, but the plot is fairly simplistic. It's the future. At one point in the past, a world war broke out, and essentially the entire the world nuked. Is not they call them quantum bombs, I believe. Mm-hmm. Quantum bombed each other into non-existence, basically. But then a bunch of civilizations reemerged from the ashes of the old world. Most of them, or some of them, are these roaming cities on wheels. They're like giant. If you were joined us for our Howl's Moving Castle episode, imagine kind of Howl's Moving Castle, except bigger and like the size of a city. And they drive around, and bigger cities eat smaller cities, and by eat them, they bring them in, they capture them, they absorb all their residents, and then they use all the resources to keep their city running, is what it seems like in the film. There is also a section of the world behind a wall that is static cities, where it's people who aren't part of these moving cities. Our main character is Hester Shaw, who we find out eventually... there's a lot going on with her, but she is at the beginning of the movie, she's on a city that is captured by London, which is one of the biggest moving cities in the world that we know of. The city is captured, she gets on the ship, and we are introduced to Hugo Weaving's character, Valentine, who is not the mayor of the city, but is one of the higher up something. He's the head of energy, secretary of energy or something like that, I believe is his title. And she immediately tries to kill him. And we don't know why yet. And this sparks an intriguing mystery as one of our other main characters, Tom Nook, sees this and stops her. But then she tells Nook, hey, Valentine isn't what you think. They both get kicked off the ship by Valentine. And now they're on the run to survive. A lot of hijinks happen. She gets chased around by her old parental robot unit named Shrike, who is trying to kill her. They meet up with some people who are part of the sort of the Static City group, some rebels kind of, who are doing their own thing. They realize eventually that Valentine, Hugo Weaving's character, has been collecting all of these old world military tech items to create a super weapon that he's going to use to destroy the wall that separates, or that is keeping all of the Static City safe. So they travel to that area. And then they fight the London as it comes to attack their wall. The wall is almost destroyed, mostly, but at the last minute, the weapon is stopped by Hester Shaw. And this saves the day. Hugo Weaving's character seems to die, but it's a little vague left in the movie in case there was a sequel potentially. But he probably died. Some other characters die. Most of them live. Happy ending. The wall is broken down, but and then the London residents that were just in the city are accepted with open arms by the residents of the wall city, the static city area, and that's the happy ending of the film. That's most of the details of what goes on here. We'll get it, or most of the broad strokes of what goes on here. We'll get into the details, but before we do that, we have the game show section of This Film Is Lit, where we play Guess Who?
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
So we have several entries.
Quite
for
a few.
Guess Who? I love young adult books because they just describe everyone.
There are lots of descriptions.
It's amazing.
Yep.
I think you'll get most of these. I don't think this is going to be hard.
Okay.
He was a tall, handsome man of nearly 40 with a mane of silver-flecked black hair and a trim black beard. His gray mariner's eyes twinkled with humor.
Okay. Nearly 40 makes him one of the older characters in the movie. Tall, handsome, has a beard and silver-flecked hair. I'm leaning towards Hugo Weaving's character, Valentine. His eyes twinkling with humor. I could also see because Valentine's character in the film presents in the beginning of the film presents as more of a nicer character than he is revealed to be. So I could see that being in the initial description. And it's sort of unearthed that he's actually sort of has a darker side. And so I'm trying to think of any other older characters that this could be that have beards, and I can't think of anybody. He's like the main one that sticks out to me, so I'm going to say that that's Valentine, the older Valentine. Well, obviously the dad. Thaddeus Valentine. Because his daughter is in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is Valentine.
Okay.
Thaddeus Valentine. So you got that one right.
Woohoo.
The only other customer was a sinister-looking woman in a long red leather coat who sat in the shadows near the bar. In spite of the dark, she wore sunglasses, the tiny lenses black as the wing cases of beetles.
Well, that one's spot on. Sinister-looking woman with the long leather red coat and the little black sunglasses. That would be Sarah. I think it's Sarah? Anna Fang.
Anna Fang.
Fang, who is like the wanted fugitive, the badass fugitive that they meet up with towards the middle of the film.
Yes, the anti-tractionist.
Yes, she's part of one of the anti-tractionists.
All right, moving on. She had a lot of long, dark hair, and her father's gray eyes, and the same quick, dazzling smile, and she was dressed in the narrow silk trousers and flowing tunic that were all the rage in High London that summer.
That would very clearly... Now, in the movie, she has blonde hair.
Yeah.
This character, but that is definitely Catherine Valentine.
Catherine Valentine.
I think they call her Kat.
They call her Kate in the book,
okay,
yeah.
So that would be Kate Valentine.
Yes.
Yeah. She's part of High London. She's the upper class. She, like I said, she does have blonde hair in the movie and not dark hair. Mm-hmm. But other than that, yeah, pretty easy.
It was 7 feet tall, and beneath its coat shone metal armor. The flesh of its long face was pale, glistening with a slug-like film of mucus, and here and there a blue-white jag of bone showed through the skin. Its mouth was a lot full of metal teeth. Its nose and the top of its head were covered by a long metal skull piece with tubes and flexes trailing down like dreadlocks, their ends plugged into ports on its chest. Its round glass eyes gave it a startled look, as if it had never gotten over the horrible surprise of what had happened to it.
That very clearly Shrike, the character who ends up raising Hester Shaw in the film. It's pretty similar. The one thing that I think stuck out to me the most is the round glass eyes giving it a startled look.
Yeah.
The one in the movie definitely has that sort of wide-eyed look the whole film. The one thing it doesn't have in this main thing it doesn't have in this description is the hoses coming down into its chest that kind of look like dreads, but that like connect to its chest, which could have been cool looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, they chose not to do that one.
He was unexpectedly handsome, with big dark eyes and a small, perfect mouth.
Well, we're running out of characters here that I would think would get a mention. So I'm going to assume that is Tom. I can't remember his last name.
Tom's last name is Natsworthy. But it's not Tom. It's Bevis. Who, the boy that the story forgot.
Oh, his mechanic friend guy?
Yeah.
Like the guy the
guy who was hanging out with Kate for a while.
Yeah, and who Tom was friends with in the beginning. Like he bumps into him in the sewer and he seems to know him.
Yeah.
And Kate doesn't, or he's like doesn't seem to like Kate because she's like, you know, upper class and he's like a poor living in the belly of the machine kind of guy. So okay, Bevis. I did not know that was his name. I think I knew everybody else's name for the most part, but Bevis was not. Don't recall that one. And you're right, the movie does kind of forget about him.
Yeah. So you're going to know who this is, but I want you to let me get through the whole description.
Okay.
She was no older than Tom, and she was hideous. A terrible scar ran across her face from forehead to jaw, making it look like a portrait that had been furiously crossed out. Her mouth was wrenched sideways in a permanent sneer, her nose was a smashed stump, and her single eye stared at him out of the wreckage.
Well, that is clearly Hester Shaw, but also clearly not Hester Shaw.
Yeah.
And I had heard this criticism of the film from even like one of the early trailers. People had been upset. Fans of the book had been upset that it was so different.
Yeah.
That they kind of gave her a very like handsome scar and kind of ignored the fact that she's like completely wrecked.
Yeah, she's pretty destroyed.
Yeah.
Like she's missing an eye.
Yeah, and her mouth is
Yeah.
Yeah. They were like, you got a scar, so that's good enough. I'm sure they have very, very good reasons. And by good, I'm saying that with giant air quotes, good reasons. It's interesting that they would make the choice to change that so much, because I'm sure it has very kind of important thematic implications for her character.
Yeah. I mean, it does. And not only that, but it's pretty ballsy to make your heroine ugly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of disappointing that the movie didn't follow through with that kind of chutzpah.
Yeah, I didn't see anything about this, like in terms of them explaining why they would have made that change, or I didn't find if you were listening to our prequel episode, I didn't find a lot of like details about the production of this film or anything. So I would be interested to hear like the filmmakers explain why they made that change.
I mean, I feel like we know why.
Yeah, I mean, sure, the marketing of just a pretty face, sure, but like still seems interesting to me. Especially interesting to me that because they have her wear that scarf over her face, which I assume her character does too, probably at least a fair amount. It seems like they could have left. They could have had they could have had both almost. They could have, if she would have covered her face with the scarf for most of it, and they'd left the top half of her face sort of less injured and damaged, and like so maybe it looks more like it does in the film, but then stuck more to what the book did in terms of like her mouth being like extremely disfigured and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that it was almost this like her hiding that part of her and that sort of thing, which she still kind of is with the face mask, but because then when she pulls it down, it's like not any worse in the film than the top half of her face, because it's just the same kind of like light scar that goes all the way across. And not that you know, plenty of people who don't have scars or anything are very self-conscious about how they look. So there's no like right or wrong answer here for how the character should feel. I'm just saying that it seems like they could have done that.
Yeah.
While still being maintaining for their like marketing a face on the poster They're like, ooh, that's a pretty girl on the poster, which is a weird... they shouldn't have done that. I'm just saying, like, I feel like they could have had their cake and eaten it too, and it's weird to me that they didn't. I guess is my point.
No, I agree.
All right, so that was, what, 6 of them? 6 of them, and I got 5. So not too bad.
You did a good job.
Not too bad. Tom wasn't in there.
There's no description.
No description of Tom?
No.
Is it from his point of view in the book? Or is it? I don't know what the point of view.
The book kind of, it's like it's a third person limited.
Okay.
But it goes back and forth between Tom and Kate.
Oh, Tom and Kate.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Hester is, I guess it is. The movie is also kind of Tom is the main character, and it does go back and forth between Tom and Kate at times in the film.
Yeah.
But I would say that Hester is a more... Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think the movie kind of does the same thing. They're the only two that we're, like, always with. Mm-hmm. We're never with Hester when she's not with Tom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we are with Kate when she's not with Tom.
Yeah.
The only thing that we get is we get flashbacks of Kate's past, or of Hester's past.
Right.
But they kind of had to do that.
Yeah.
I would think. I mean, they could have done it differently, but the way they chose to tell the story, they kind of had to do flashbacks. So, yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. That was it for Guess Who. Let's get into the big, important questions and find out, was that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
All right, so we've established the setting of this book in the prequel and of the movie is that it is, originally the idea was that it was going to be like sort of contemporary or like very near future or something like that. It was supposed to be set originally like...
It was going to be like an alternate
yeah.
history version like of the current time.
Right. But they changed, the author changed that and made it like, do you remember what year it is? It's like, it's hundreds of years in the future.
Like thousands of years
if not
in the
thousands,
future.
yeah. I think it was close to like 3000 AD or ADE. And so, is it ADE? Yeah. No.
I don't know.
It's BCE and is it AD? It doesn't matter. Now it's going to drive me crazy that I can't remember what the... It doesn't matter. So it's like 3,000 something, and it's hundreds and hundreds of years after modern time, quote unquote. And in the movie, there's this moment where we're introduced to Tom's character, and we find out he works in the museum, in the London Museum, basically. He's like... he does something there. I never figured out exactly what he was doing. But he works for the London Museum, and they going through the museum where we're introduced to his character, and they bump into somebody looking at one of the other characters, like the curator of the museum, because of all the shaking during this chase that's going on, says, "Oh no, the American deities," and then they run over to secure them to make sure they don't fall and break. And in the film, the camera pans over, and it's 2 minion statues, and God, you know. Hey, it's there. It's a thing. So is that, I'm assuming now, I know this book was written in what, the like 80s or 90s?
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s. So the minions weren't a thing at the point when this was written. Is that moment in the book? And if so, what are the American deities that we get?
Yes, actually, there is a similar joke in the book. There's a mention early on when they're in the museum of an ancient American deity, Mickey Mouse.
Okay. So obviously they had to change it because this movie wasn't produced by Disney.
Yeah.
So they couldn't use Mickey Mouse. So they came up with something they probably owned.
Yeah.
I guess Universal owns... I think this was Universal.
Yeah, Universal.
And they own,
Minions.
And they own the Minions. So there you go. It makes sense that they would make that change. It's not going to age well. The same way that Mickey Mouse would.
Yeah.
But I get it. If you can't use Mickey Mouse, I get it. All right. Next question. And we find out in the movie that Tom has been collecting. So part of his he's a collector of old world tech. And one of he likes old world tech in general, but one of the things he's doing is that he's stowing away old world weapons that he finds because he realizes that somebody on the ship is collecting them and he's worried they're going to use them. So he has been simultaneously stowing away old world weapons so that he can get rid of them because he doesn't want them used because he he knows enough about the history that using these weapons would be a bad idea. Is that something is that a plot line in the book?
No.
Okay.
Tom is not stockpiling old world tech.
Okay.
Weapons.
Does he work in the museum?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a similar type of character.
Yeah. So in this universe, you get like an apprenticeship to there are like a handful of guilds.
Yeah.
And so he's an apprentice to the Historians Guild.
Gotcha.
He works in the museum.
Okay, cool. So I like this a lot in the movie. This movie started stronger for me and then kind of slowly got worse and worse and worse. And I not to spoil my overall review, I overall enjoyed this film as a whole. It has its faults. It's not a great movie or even maybe a good movie, but I enjoyed it in general. But it definitely got worse as it went. What I really liked in the beginning was that we sort of jump right in to Hester's storyline, sort of in media res, without any backstory about who she is. She's on the little Bavarian mining city or whatever they say that's driving around that gets captured by London. And then when she gets into London, they're like all the residents from the city are being onboarded, being put through immigration or whatever into London. And Hugo Weaving's character, Valentine, has come down to like oversee this process, and she sees him and immediately goes after him to try to assassinate him with the knife she's hiding. And she does. She doesn't assassinate him, but she stabs him and says like, "This is for my mother." And we're like, what? Wow. Had no idea what was going on or why she wanted to do this. And I really liked that hook in the movie of trying to then figure out what is going on. Is that how the book plays out, or do we get her backstory first?
Kind of similar-ish. The book starts with Tom in London. Okay. So we don't like start with Hester on the other city.
Right. We also in the movie also starts with Tom in London. Yeah. We're kind of simultaneous. We're going back and forth, I guess, in the movie.
But Hester is introduced like at the moment that she attempts to assassinate Valentine.
Gotcha.
So we don't like see her like sneaking in and going through the line or anything like that. And we find out her backstory throughout the book, kind of similarly to how it is in the movie. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's basically the same kind of thing, because I just really liked that, and I assumed that was how it worked. And it was funny. It's funny though. I guess part of what sort of tricked me about this movie going in is that the marketing and all of the marketing and trailers and stuff for the movie, I absolutely assumed she was like our main character, and she's not really. Like Tom is kind of the main character. I mean, they're both like quote unquote main characters, but like Tom is the audience sort of POV character. Like you said in the book, it's sort of third person limited from his perspective. Yeah. And it's similar in the movie to where we're not following her the whole time. We do kind of eventually when they meet up and are together from there on out. But I guess I thought we were going to be like learning more about her. When I watched the trailer, like I don't even think I knew that Tom's character was in the movie from watching the trailers. Yeah. Like she's the only person they show. Yeah. And I'm sure that was a very specific marketing choice because she's a more intriguing looking character than Tom. Like Tom's just like some dude, like a handsome dude, but just some dude. Where she's got the scarf and the scar and like she's doing badass stuff, and so she's like easy to like put in your trailer and sell your movie on. But it is interesting because it's not what I was expecting, sort of the direction the film went. Yeah. Based on, again, the couple trailers that I saw. All right, cool. After Hester Shaw runs away, there's a big chase scene after she stabs Valentine. She gets away, she's running, and Tom chases after her because at this point Tom really respects Valentine and he thinks like the world of him. He's really impressed by him. And so after he sees her stab him, he tries to chase her down. And they get to this like trash chute basically that leads out of London, or at least it appears to. It does when we find out. And she tries to jump, and he catches her. And as she's falling, and she's like, "Let go of me," and he's like, "No." And she basically says like, "He's not what you think he is. Ask him about Hester Shaw." And then she falls, and he's like, "What?" And I thought that was another great. This whole opening sequence to me, I thought was really good. Is that what happens in the book? Does she tell him, ask him about Hester Shaw? Yeah, basically. The exact line in the book is ask him what he did to Hester Shaw. But yeah, it plays out.
I think that's a better line, honestly. then ask him about Hester Shaw, which maybe that's what it says in the movie. I just kind of wrote it down. I'm not sure I got it exactly right, but I was into it. I thought that was a good hook. Cool. So the book does the same thing. It's sounding to me like, because especially based on what I know of your notes later, that maybe this movie started more similar to the book and then sort of slowly kind of went off course.
Say that that's accurate.
Which is interesting because that's also when it was doing more, because based on my sort of mini review earlier, I enjoyed the movie more in the beginning and it sort of slowly lost some of its luster for me as it veered more from the book, which is interesting. It makes sense. And then, so after that happens, Tom immediately confronts Valentine and is like, what's up with Hester Shaw? She says, to ask about her. And he's like, oh, that's too bad. And then drop kicks Tom off the boat or off the ship as well. Is that what he does in the book?
Yeah.
Okay. And that leads to them meeting up and going on their little adventure together. Cool. So then we find out that there's a whole world or continent, or we don't have. One of the bigger problems in the movie, and we'll talk about it later, is that we don't really ever get sort of a bigger idea of what's going on, sort of with the geopolitics of the world. Not that we needed a bunch of it, but or even the geography of the world. But we find out that there's people living behind this big wall who are static city people who don't live in big roaming cities. Is that's what's going on in the book? Are there two sort of separate?
Yeah, it's two kind of factions, I guess. Yeah.
Separated by a wall, and there's Okay.
So the implication in the book and in the movie, I guess, is that the wall is blocking off the east.
Yeah.
Kind of vaguely.
Yeah, it
and
is.
And then
the
Europe
east.
is just a wasteland with these big traction cities roaming around.
Yeah. Okay. I assumed that was probably the same because I figured, at least in general, that plot of them trying to destroy the wall and get over there to conquer it, to colonize it, was probably what was going on. But yeah. So after they fall off the ship, they're now on their little fun camping trip together, Tom and Hester, and she's hungry, so she pulls out a snack and she has Twinkies. So they pull off a Twinkie joke. Where she's eating Twinkies and their expiration date is the year 2300.
Yeah.
Which, depending on when this is, could be hundreds of years old. But he's like, wow, aren't these bad? And she goes, no, they're the old...
The food of the ancients.
The food of the ancients never goes bad or something like that.
Yeah.
Does that happen in the book?
No, that's not in the book.
No Twinkie joke?
No Twinkie joke.
Twinkies go bad, people. You can't eat Twinkies forever.
I think she calls them Inkies, too.
She does. I guess maybe the TW was rubbed off or something. Or yeah, she does call them Inkies. But yeah, Twinkie joke. Twinkies go bad. It's not a good joke.
Why is it always Twinkies? Is there something to that?
It's because they're highly processed and
I mean, so is everything.
A lot of stuff.
I'm off topic here. I'm just wondering if there's a specific.
I think it's because they do last quite a while. But yeah, I don't know what it is specifically about Twinkie. There was probably some marketing thing, or I don't know. Maybe somebody anti-marketing campaign or something. Maybe whoever
if there was something similar to that. Remember the whole thing that went around about oh, I left this McDonald's hamburger for a year.
Yeah, I wonder if Little Debbie was starting rumors about how Twinkies never go bad because they're made with so many. Actually, Burger King just brought that back up again. Their new well, they did. They have a new ad out about. Their ad is literally just a shot of a Whopper, and then the camera sits on it for a month, and then it gets all moldy. Yeah, and they're like, it's made with all natural ingredients, so it gets moldy like a burger should or whatever. I just want to... It's not... People, the reason that a McDonald's burger doesn't get moldy has nothing to do with the fact that it's made out of things you shouldn't eat. It has to do with the salt. I mean, it's made out of things you shouldn't eat a lot of because it's got a lot of salt in it. But when you got a lot of salt and it dehydrates, it won't grow mold. That's what happens. And
that's science.
If you'll notice, it's always a plain burger in those pictures and fries. It's never a burger with lettuce and tomato and all kinds of stuff that will go bad. It's always oh, I left this cheeseburger. Plain cheeseburger. Yeah. Ugh. Anyway, don't get me going on that. All right, what do we have next here? The Centipede ship. They seem fun. Our main characters are running away from some the Southies, I think they call them, that are like these like human hunter. They're hunting people or whatever, and they're running, and then they fall through a hole in the ground, and they end up in this crazy cool centipede ship that has like sections, and it crawls away, and it like can like burrow into the ground, I guess. Is that?
They do get picked up by a similar-ish couple of people.
Yeah.
But it's not shaped like a centipede. It's just like a regular little town.
Okay, so that was just a movie design choice to have a different thing. Yeah, it's fun. I like when movies do stuff like that, kind of add, a spin on something. Does Hugo Weaving unleash a giant crazy Terminator zombie that wants to kill Hester?
Yes, he does.
At this point, we didn't know anything about this character, so I was just like, it's just some crazy Terminator that wants to kill Hester. Okay, cool. Right on, dude. This is a fun scene. So later, they're now running from Shrike. This is after Anna Fang has purchased.
She saves them from being sold into slavery.
The couple in the centipede monster was going to sell them into slavery, and Anna Fang shows up and offers to buy them. But then they're like, "Well, we're not going to sell them to you because we could just take you and turn you in for the bounty." So then she murders everybody.
Yeah.
Does that happen in the book? Or a similar thing? I didn't ask about this, but I didn't have a note about it.
Not really. She does help them get away when they're going to be sold into slavery, but it's not like she doesn't just murder everyone in a big fight.
Boo. Better in the movie. So as they're getting away, Shrike shows up and Tom is left behind, and then Hester throws him a rope because they're on Anna Fang has like a flying, like kind of like a Zeppelin.
She's an aviatrix.
Yeah, an aviatrix. She's a cool Zeppelin plane thingy. And they're flying away, and Hester's on it, and Tom is trapped behind, and Shrike's coming for him, and she throws him a rope, and he starts climbing it, but then Shrike grabs it and is going to pull down the plane they're on. It's a cool scene. And Fang slides Hester a knife and is like, cut the rope loose or we're going to die. Leave him. And instead, Hester drops the knife so that Tom can catch it and save himself. And it's big epic moment. Is that from the book?
No.
Do they just get away? Or?
Yeah, they just get away.
Okay. No big, like, Shrike almost pulling the plane down or anything. Boo. Boo. Better in the movie. Maybe. I don't know. It was a little silly, but it's a heck of a catch he made there. Was Hester... So we find out, ultimately, that Hester was found and raised by Shrike after her mother died, which we know at this point her mother was killed by Valentine. And then he wounded her, she ran away, and then she was in the wasteland, or whatever they call it, and so she ended up being raised by Shrike, who is this, like, crazy, heartless demon robot thing, which it's very complicated, and maybe we'll talk about more. And then the reason now we find out that Shrike is hunting her down is that she was always sad, and she promised, he was like, I can make you not sad, you just turn into a robot like me. And she was like, okay, yes, I promise I'll become a robot like you. And then she runs away. She leaves because she finds out Valentine is nearby and she wants to go kill Valentine. And he's very upset that he didn't get to turn her into a robot. There's ultimately, I think, I'll talk about it later. I have notes about it. I think there's some I really like their storyline. I think it's like the strongest thing in the movie. I think they could have spent more time on it even than they do. Or at least the most interesting sort of B plot in the movie. But is that what's going on in the movie? Is that why Shrike's after her? What's their deal?
So she was raised by Shrike. She didn't promise him that she would become a stalker, which is what they call what he is.
Yeah, they say that in the movie too. Yeah,
maybe or not. But that is what he wants, and it's ultimately why he's chasing her down, is because he wants her to also become a stalker, so that they can have adventures together forever. I
think that makes sense. It's similar, like, because the note I have about it later, when we get to odds and ends, that I just kind of want to talk about some of the sort of thematic things going on. I think that is an interesting idea. I think it's similar in the movie. They just add the wrinkle of like her promising that she would, which is I could take or leave based on what you're saying about the book version of it, because I think either way the same sort of message works. Again, I'll talk about it later, but the sort of message about parents and expectations and sort of letting go of your children, that sort of thing. I think it's well done in the movie, and it sounds like in the book. I think the thing that I thought was interesting about having him say you broke your promise is because I thought it was going to be something completely different. I like the movie does this at least. It kind of it throws almost like a red herring out, because what I thought when he says she made a promise, and then I was like, ooh, this guy I thought would have been fun too, is that her promise, like he raises her, and somehow he knows that she like he can't, because he like resurrects or something, like he can't be killed. Like almost or something.
No,
like
he can be. He just is like, they're ridiculously hard to kill.
Okay. I guess maybe my thought was, I thought it was something, because they call him like the resurrected or something at one point in the movie. And I thought the idea was going to be that he literally like couldn't die by people trying to kill him or something, unless it was, and I thought there was going to be something like that the promise she made was that like after he raised her is like that he made her promise that like she would kill him, and it's something about like there would be something special about her that would make her able to kill him, and that was the promise that she broke, was that she left because she couldn't kill him because she cared for him because he raised, you know what I mean? Yeah. I thought it was going to be something like that.
Yeah. And
then she broke that promise, and now he's hunting her down because he doesn't want to live anymore because he's been resurrected over and over, and he's like in this miserable metal body that can't feel or whatever. I thought that could have been interesting. I still like what the movie does with it, but I was completely sort of, my mind went a completely different direction based on the like you made a promise line that I think is maybe more interesting, but I still I like what the movie did.
So they call them the resurrected because it's like this ancient. So when we meet Shrike, Tom is like shocked because this the resurrected or the stalkers are like a myth. Basically, they're like, the ancients found a way to like resurrect their warriors and like bring them back to life. Yeah, kind of. So that's why they call them the resurrected.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense because he was human at one point, and then he was sort of turned into this. So like that was the resurrection, quote unquote. But just when they said that the first time, and then with the other stuff going on, I thought it was going to be that sort of interesting twist. But still really liked it. All right, a couple more questions here. When we get towards the end of the movie, Hugo Weaving's character Valentine has created this giant super weapon, the Medusa weapon, in the top of London that he's going to use to destroy the wall. The mayor comes to confront him and is like, hey man, don't do this. The mayor who we saw like in the first scene and then hadn't seen the rest of the movie until like this last scene. It's a sort of an abandoned plot line. But he shows up and is like, this is madness or whatever. And Hugo Weaving's like, no, this is Sparta, and kicks him down a hole. Essentially. But instead of saying this is Sparta and the other guy saying this is madness, he goes, what does he say to him? He says, Hugo Weaving is like, look, this is the future. And the mayor's like, no, this isn't the future, and this isn't the way, we shouldn't do this. And Hugo Weaving's character Valentine says, well, you're a dinosaur. And the mayor says back to him, well, then what does that make you? And then Hugo Weaving shoots him and said something that I didn't understand at first, but I realized because of his accent, but I realized later that, or after a second, that he said the meteor, but he's like the media. Like he says it like in his Hugo Weaving, like kind of British accent. And I was like, what did he say? The meat eater? Like, what? He said the meteor, like, that killed the dinosaurs. I get it now. But is that line from the book?
No, it's not.
I couldn't decide if it was good or not. I was, like, very torn on whether or not that was a good line.
I thought it was kind of cringy.
It's not the best line in the movie, but it's okay, I guess. The meteor. I thought it was all right. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It like makes sense at least. So is Valentine's plan in the book to take down the shield wall so that they can colonize and destroy everything beyond it?
Yes, that is the evil plan in the book as well.
Okay. Does Fang have a sweet little boot knife, like on her heel?
That's not specifically mentioned.
Okay.
But I like to think that she did.
Because that was an interesting thing in the movie, is that she has a blade in the heel of her boot that comes out. And I thought it was funny because it reminded me of Wild Wild West, because Jim West, Will Smith's character, has that exact thing, except it's in the toe of his boot, which is much more practical.
Well, that was actually a thing. shoe knife, like in the toe. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still not a particularly practical weapon,
No.
but it's cool.
But you could kick somebody with
Yeah.
it. But now she does in the movie, and I guess the idea is because she's so flexible that it works. Because she does kick her heel all the way up backwards over her head into like a bad guy's forehead at one point. And it's such a strange choice for a
Very
weapon.
odd.
That it's just like, why would you do that when you could just put it in the front where it would be much more effective and you don't have to do gymnastics to use it? But okay.
Or like, why not both?
Or not. Yeah, why not both? Porque no las dos. I was like, all right, cool, I guess. I mean, again, it's the steampunk thing. We're kind of doing wacky things with gadgets because we can. I didn't hate it. I just thought it was funny. So at towards the end, Hester confesses her love for Tom to Shrike, and this causes Shrike to like shut down for some reason. Doesn't seem like anybody harms him in any way. He just sort of turns off because he realizes that she loves Tom. Does that happen in the book?
No, I'm not really sure I can comment on this. Shrike does die, but Tom ultimately kills Shrike. It's a good bit later in the story, though.
Yeah. See, it's interesting because in the movie, it almost looked like it was edited around a different event happening. I don't know if you noticed this. I thought there was a moment in the movie, and I don't know anybody who watched it recently for this episode may have noticed this, where as he's like, after she's like, no, I love Tom, and he seems to like, this seems to affect him greatly, it almost seems like there's a moment where I kept expecting he like reacts, and I kept expecting for him to like drop and there to be somebody behind him that had stabbed him somehow. Mm-hmm. The way it's shot and the way it looks, I kept thinking that was going to happen, and I almost wonder if there was like a cut that had that, like somebody had. Now, it doesn't make any sense because everybody else is in the other part of the ship at this point. I don't know who it would have been. But it was still very strange about the way, maybe I was just like, because I kept expecting like, oh, somebody's gonna have stabbed him, but no, he just shuts down or dies from. Kind
of an odd. I mean,
the idea is, I get the thematic idea is that at this point he then realizes that Hester doesn't need him anymore. Yeah. Or that. I get because that, she's happy. Because the whole reason he was hunting her down was that she was unhappy, and he wanted to make her happy by make her not feel anymore by turning her into a robot. And when he realizes, oh, she is happy because she's in love with this guy, I don't need to do that anymore. She's good now. My job here is, my mission is done.
His journey is over.
So I think it works. It was a little interesting.
Yeah.
I kept expecting, because I also think it's thematically that with the same setup that Tom stabbing him also works. Mm-hmm. As it's a little different, but Tom is sort of being the next person in her life that, your job here's done, I'm taking over kind of thing. Maybe a little more oddly weird and patriarchal. Yeah. In a gross way, so maybe they avoided that, which is kind of nice, Like the boyfriend murdering the dad so that he can have the lady now. I think that maybe that was potentially a good choice to not have that happen, but it still works in sort of a archetypical type of way.
It does.
We get to the end, and this is where it gets really wild. So they realize that Valentine has this giant weapon that he's using to destroy the wall. And they know at this point that the only thing that can shut it down is this, it's like called a crash card, I believe is what they call it. It's some sort of little like flash drive that you plug into the machine, and this stops the machine. It was like a, fail safe that they had on these weapons back a long time ago. And they had tried to destroy the ship already, but they couldn't do it. They were just going to blow the weapon up, but they all their ships got blown up. And at one point in the movie, Hester, it goes down as the wall is being attacked, and she's looking at like an old shrine of some sort. Mm-hmm. And she sees this eye emblem on the head of the shrine. And she remembers this necklace that her mother gave her, or that we saw in a flashback in the movie, and that we've seen several times over the course of the movie, and that Shrike gave back to her. Yeah. In like the previous scene, right when he died, is this eyeball necklace. But she had it for a long time, it seemed. She just left it at one point. I don't remember how Shrike got it.
When
the movie?
when he initially like rescues her, she starts to drop it and he grabs it.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's the last time we see it till like he gives it back.
So maybe he had it the whole time, which makes this next part at least make a little more sense than I originally thought.
Yeah.
So she sees this eyeball and then she remembers this necklace and she looks at it and then it opens and it has the crash card in it.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, shit. Okay, cool. I guess this is
That's
the thing we need."
Thing we need.
Right. There's a MacGuffin we need. And now in the movie, I was like, that was literally the first time in your whole life that you've had that you realized it opened. And now maybe if Shrike has had it the whole time, makes a little
implication.
That makes a little more sense. But it's still a little like she just kind of brainwaves like, oh, this necklace that looks like my neck. Oh, whoa, like very kind of convenient writing. Is that what happens in the book?
No.
Okay.
There's no necklace. There's no fail-safe card. We'll get to that a little bit later. So none of that happens.
None of that happens.
No.
Okay. Following on from that, does Hester eventually shut down Medusa, and does Fang sacrifice herself so that Hester can do that?
No. And no. Anna Feng does die, but she's killed in the city just past the wall, not in London.
Is she killed by Valentine?
Yes.
Okay, so he's off the ship at some point.
Yes.
Wild, because he never leaves the ship in the movie.
I know.
He's just in the basilica or whatever, the church, so that they have the giant weapon in. All right. So now this is where it gets very confusing and silly to me in the movie, is that after the weapon is blowing a hole in the wall, but it doesn't quite make it through in the movie. It blows a pretty big hole, but doesn't quite destroy the wall, so they can't drive the city through. But at this point, Valentine in the movie is like, all right, final plan B or whatever, and he has his goons go murder everybody in the like control room of London and then set it on a collision course with the wall to destroy the wall. And then he's going to get on a ship and fly away. Does that happen in the book? Because I don't know what the heck his plan is in the movie.
So none of the climax of the movie is the way that it happens in the book, like except for the basic concept that they want to use Medusa to bust down the wall and then colonize everything on the other side.
Yeah.
But other than that, everything is different.
Okay.
So I can't even begin to explain what his
all right,
motivations
let's
were.
Real quick, just so for my own self and for people who just watched the movie, try to figure out what the heck. I just want to talk about it for a minute because I thought this was like the weakest part of the movie in terms of like I did not understand what was going on, like what his possible motivation was. Is because I mean the movie never explains it, but like so his whole motivation this whole time is he's power hungry. He wants to break through the wall so that he can conquer everything past the wall because they're basically running out of resources on their side, and if they break through the wall, there's all kinds of fuel and whatever resources on the other side of the wall that they can conquer with their city or with London. But after the weapon is shut down and he can't make it through the wall, his plan is to kamikaze London into the wall, thus destroying the wall. But then what's his plan?
Right, because it would also destroy London.
You would think
you
it would also destroy London, which means he no longer has the firepower or the any sort of means to then conquer anything past. Now maybe his plan is to fly back to like one of the other major like England cities or something and then come back maybe, but the movie never addresses any of that. And it was just the strangest thing. And I guess the point is like at this point it's like the sort of the white whale idea of like he doesn't have a plan. It's just he's so focused on destroying the wall and getting through it as sort of this great this white whale that he's lost all rational sense. But it doesn't feel that way. Like he doesn't see, because he's still worried about like getting off the ship and saving his daughter, and like he seems like he's still trying to rationally operate in some way. Like if he was just like completely bonkers and like driving the ship himself at the wall, I would be like, okay, like his plan he doesn't have a plan. His plan is I'm bringing this wall down one way or the other, and it just felt so weird. It felt so just sort of like they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so they just wrote an ending.
Which is funny because they already had an ending.
And we're going to talk about that.
Okay,
cool. Final thing. This twist reveal is... I couldn't believe it, and I was like, this better be in the book, and even still, it's sort of like, why would you do "No, I'm your father" ever in your fantasy literature? Like, the moment where the main character, or one of the main, like the main, like, hero of the story confronts the main villain of the story, and that villain says, "No, I'm your father," I was like, really? You can't, nobody can do that anymore. You can't do that anymore. At least not in the way they do it, because they literally do it. She gets on top of this ship, has her gun on Valentine, and he goes, you're a lot like me, or whatever. And he's like, your mother never told you, or whatever he says, something like, or not your mother never told you, but you always suspected, didn't you, or something, implying that he's her father, because during the flashbacks we saw that her mom and him were close, and the implication is that he's her father. And they do it like exactly like Empire Strikes Back, and I'm just like, what?
That's a choice.
It's such a choice. Is that what happens in the book?
No. She is his daughter, or it's implied that she is. Yeah. Like, pretty strongly implied, but they don't like explicitly confirm it the way that they do in the movie. Or
is it a confrontation between the two of them? Where that's okay, because that's the thing to me.
Yeah, there's no "I am your father" moment.
Yeah.
In the book, Valentine mentions to Kate at one point that Hester might have been her half sister.
Okay.
Because him and her mother were fairly close, and he's like, but I'm not sure though.
Yeah.
And then like at the very end of the book, Kate and Hester come face to face, and they like look exactly the same.
See, that's if you're gonna do it, because I get wanting the dramatic reveal.
Yeah.
Like, I get wanting like the moment of like realization for the audience to rip that Band-Aid off, and for the audience to go, oh shit. Whereas opposed to like him just offhand mentioning it to Kate in the middle of the story wouldn't be interesting. Mm-hmm. Set a few more if you're gonna do it in the movie, if you wanted that big reveal, set a few more breadcrumbs over the course of the movie. We already had a little bit where we see them kind of like, where we see in the flashback, we see Pandora, who's Hester's mom, and Valentine sort of like, canoodling or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then maybe do a couple more moments like that, and then at the end have that moment where, because I think that's at least a different and interesting reveal, is have Kate and Hester meet, and I don't know how you would do it, but you could write it in a way where you could reveal it then that is still shocking and memorable to the audience without me literally having my eyes roll out of my head, that you had the gall to essentially straight up recreate the "I'm your father" moment from Empire Strikes Back. Like, you can reveal the villain as the father of the hero, but you gotta not do it the exact same way that the most well-known movie scene of all time did it, maybe? Like, I don't know. I was like, oh, that's a brave choice. Like, that's a bold choice. Let's see if it pays off. All right, that was all I had for Was That in the Book. Have a few questions for Lost in Adaptation, so let's get into those.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Wow, there's a lost.
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
So in the movie, obviously, we talked about there are the traction cities and the static cities. And the thing that was really interesting to me is that we never get an explanation in the film as to why half of the world decided to organize into giant, unwieldy, moving tank cities. Like there's no like, oh, and because of X reason, the best way to survive was in giant moving tank cities. You know what I mean?
It's kind of similarly vague in the book.
Okay.
The world destroyed itself.
Yeah.
And they rebuilt as rolling cities because like the earth wasn't safe to live on.
But it was at least most of it, because there's a whole half of the world that lives.
I mean, the other explanation here is because steampunk.
Right, and that's fine if that's your reason. I just would have liked if they had come up with even the lamest attempt to give me some sort of justification as to why this is necessary. You know what I mean? Like, why not even necessary, why it would have started. I could even see if, like, for some reason it started and then it just sort of, that was the way so for some reason it happened, and then after that, you know, everybody just kept doing it and just kind of spiraled out of control to where that's just the way things are now. But it was just, no, it's just like, I'm just like, it just seems so impractical. Like, it just seems like no reason you would ever create giant moving cities unless you had to for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that reason would be, and the movie never attempts to give us a reason for that, which I found a little disappointing. But does the book give us any more? We've talked about and revealed now the fact that Valentine is Hester's father, and that Hester and Valentine and Pandora were together. Do we get any more of the background on their relationship in the book than we do in the movie? Because we get a couple flashbacks, and I'm just not really sure, like, the nature of their relationship or what their whole deal was. Not
a ton. We know that Pandora was his assistant on a trip to America, like for a dig, and that it was implied that they were together, at least at one point. But other than that, we don't really get any more. Yeah.
And I think I wrote this pretty early, like before the whole reveal at the end, with their whole deal being that they were together. So, like, that makes a little more sense why it was vague at this point when I wrote this question in the movie, because I didn't want it to be obvious what was going on. So what about Kate? Let's talk about Kate Valentine. In the movie, she seemed, at one point earlier in the film, her and her dad have sort of a political disagreement. He says, like, I know you think that traction people and city or statics can live together peacefully, but, you know, you're living in fairyland or whatever. Like, they seem to disagree somewhat politically. Like, maybe, I don't know if she's studying, like, if it's something to do with her schooling or whatever, or why she thinks, because we don't get much of her backstory or what she's about in the film, and I don't know, like, what her deal is, like, if she's, like, super motivated by the idea of, like, peacefully joining these two societies back together, or, like, I don't know what her motivation is, other than, like, eventually in the movie she finds out that her dad's kind of evil, and so then she, like, helps stop him. But I guess my fact is, like, she seems very quick to go down that path in the movie, and I don't know what her starting point is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kate has much more of an arc in the book than she does in the movie. She starts out, like, the thing that kind of kicks her off down this road of discovery is that she wants to know more about the girl who tried to kill her dad.
Yeah.
So she wants to, like, unravel that mystery. And she starts out believing that her dad is, like, all good and that he must just not know about all of the terrible things that go on in the background in the city. And then as she digs deeper into this conspiracy, she comes to realize that really her father's just a coward. There are some big differences.
Okay, I was about to say, that
his character.
It doesn't particularly strike me as germane to his character in the film.
There's some big differences, which I'm going to get into.
All right, interesting. So it sounds similar in the movie. I have a feeling it's just the same kind of thing, whereas because the book has more time to explore it, that we get a much more, because what you described here is essentially identical to what happens in the book or in the movie. But in the movie, it just, I'm sure in the book we're getting a more fleshed out, because she is one of sort of the main focal like point of view characters. We're getting a more fleshed out sort of worldview for her in the book than what we get in the movie, because it's so minimal. Like, I literally, the only thing I know about her is that her dad at one point has an offhand comment about her thinking that, I guess I just wanted more to know who she was at the beginning. I felt like the movie did an okay job explaining to me who Tom was, like, in terms of his, like, love of the old technology, and that he seems to be somewhat of a pacifist because he's hoarding all these weapons and he doesn't want them to be used again and that sort of thing, and that's his motivation. You know what I mean? Like, and that he respects Valentine's character because Valentine, what he thinks, like, his motivation seems like what I was expecting Kate's should have, like, her should have been as fleshed out as his was, I feel like.
No, I agree.
And so that was where I was kind of stumbling, but okay. Cool, that was all I had for Lost in Adaptation. Let's go ahead and talk about what was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
So we already talked about the fact that Hester is really just too pretty.
Yeah.
She's too pretty. I won't rehash what we already discussed, but I do want to say something else that bothered me about it in this particular movie was that they leaned into a trope that I hate, which is that she's still perfectly pretty, but whenever her scarf is down, people are like, oh, she's hideous.
She's hideous. Yeah.
She's a disgusting creature.
Yeah.
She's fine, you guys.
Yeah.
She just has a scar.
Yeah.
Calm down.
Yeah, there are numerous times where characters are like, you're better off as sausage, you ugly piece of shit. And you're like, wait a second.
No, hold on
Wait
just a minute, my good sir.
Wait a second. Yeah, that is a problem.
Yeah.
You didn't change any of the dialogue, but you did change what the character looks like, and that doesn't really work.
So in the book, Kate has a pet wolf that she calls Dog. I love Dog.
Nice.
I demand for Dog to be in this movie.
No dog.
But also I have a caveat to that later, which we're going to talk about. But in general, I demand Dog, and I'm very disappointed that Dog was not in this movie. It was really weird to me that Tom was, like, hoarding the old weapons and, like, planning to dispose them, because Tom is supposed to be the character that we watch learn that everything he grew up with is actually very, very bad, and that London is not a great place.
Yeah. See, I think he, yeah, see, that's interesting, because I think this movie does a little bit of...
I think they do, like, a watered-down version.
I think...
But it was weird to me that we started out with him, like, somebody is taking these weapons, so I'm going to get rid of them.
And I think that's probably one of the places that the movie fails, is that the movie goes, okay, so London, the movie makes it about one bad apple or several bad apples versus systemic problems with...
Yep, and that's what we're going to talk about in a bit.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about it,
and that's sort of reflected in Tom's sort of character arc here at the beginning, of him going, like, because his arc is, he realizes there are problems, but he realizes that his hero worship of Valentine is misplaced, but he still constantly throughout the course of the movie is like, well, no, London's great, it's good, there's innocent people and blah blah blah, etc. Which sure, there are innocent people, part of every evil machine, but I think that's the big sort of bait and switch that the movie pulls, is that it absolutely does the, oh, it's just this. See, no, London's there's all these colonizers, they're fine. All those people cheering when we run down little cities and eat them, they're okay. It's this one guy, this motherfucker right here, Hugo Weaving. See him? He's the problem. We got rid of him. We're fine.
All good now. It's all great. We're going to be accepted by the anti-attractionist with open arms.
That's a real liberal. That's some real liberal white Hollywood bullshit.
Yep. All right. So we'll get more on that later. The engineers in the book are all bald, like they chemically removed their hair, which I thought was really creepy.
Which ones are the engineers now?
They all wore like white coats.
Yeah.
Like
the main one is that woman,
yes,
Twix or whatever her name is.
Yeah, so they're all like egghead bald.
Interesting.
Which I thought could have been creepy.
Some of them have short hair or no hair. I feel like some of them have a look like that.
I don't remember.
But they're not bald.
Yeah,
but
they're like all bald, and they wear like goggles, and
I
don't know. I thought it could have been like spooky looking if they had cared to do anything with that. All right, so let's talk about Valentine, because the movie makes Valentine into the big bad. In the book, Chrome, the mayor, is the big bad, and I understand that from like a narrative perspective. from like wanting to streamline the story.
Yeah.
And just have like, okay, Valentine is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Right? Simple.
Yeah.
But I also think it's more interesting and ultimately like more tragic the way that the book does it, which is that he is a coward who is afraid to climb out of the mayor's pocket. I think it's more interesting that he's someone who's flawed and wants to be better, but consistently fails at doing so.
Gotcha. So Chrome is the one behind the weapon and all that sort of stuff? Chrome
is the one behind the weapon and everything.
And okay. And Valentine's going along with it because he's a coward.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Talk about movie.
Real quick before can we get back to that? So does in the I didn't ask this, but I assumed it was the same. Does Valentine kill Pandora in the? Or if you have another note about it somewhere, we can talk about it later.
Yeah, he does.
And is it for the same reason of taking that tech or whatever?
Yeah.
But it's less of his own like sort of power, greed, aspirations, and more because like what's his motivation for killing her and taking her at that point? Is he because he has to do this for Chrome and for London, or like what? You know what I'm saying? Like. Because in the movie, it's very like a big villainous moment of him like, how dare you? And he flies into a rage. Like, is that similar, or is it like that she like won't let him have it or is going to hide it? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, she doesn't want him to take it. And I don't know that the book really like goes into what his motivation in that specific moment is. I think it's implied that he is ashamed of it later, and that's why he's kind of trying to like cover it up, and he doesn't want anybody to know about Hester Shaw.
Right. Okay.
He is a bad guy. He's just not the bad guy that the movie gives us.
Gotcha.
So movie Bevis, speaking of guys that the movie didn't give us.
Yeah.
This was really hard for me because I actually loved his character in the book. Are we still calling people cinnamon rolls? Because he was a cinnamon roll
I
in the
don't know.
book.
Were we ever?
Just like, oh, you were never on Tumblr. Okay,
No.
never mind.
No.
You all just learned something about me.
I mean, I'm aware of the precious little cinnamon roll.
Yeah, precious
whatever.
little cinnamon roll. He was a precious little cinnamon roll, and I loved him.
Okay.
So I really didn't care for movie Bevis, who was like kind of like gravelly voiced and like.
Yeah.
You don't know what goes on in this city.
Yeah.
And then like just completely drops out of the movie.
Disappears.
Yeah, just vanishes. Yeah. So that was disappointing. I didn't understand how Valentine, like I didn't understand the choice that we made where Valentine gets Shrike out of the prison. Because he like wants Shrike, so he shoots down the entire prison.
Yeah, I thought that was silly.
That was kind of weird.
It was to show. I mean, the idea they're trying to add some characterization for
to show that
Valentine.
He was like, I was thinking to show that Shrike was like indestructible.
Well, that too, but also I think for Valentine that he doesn't like for whatever he will destroy, burn anything to the ground to reach his. Whatever his goal is. Like he wants her dead. He wants him out of there. He doesn't care that he's going to destroy the whole prison and kill a bunch of prisoners, I assume, and people in the prison to do it. I think is sort of what, you know what I mean? They're trying to add a little bit of characterization in that moment beyond just like him breaking him out of there.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, a little bit for Shrike to show like he is a little indestructible, that like he shoots a hole in his cage and it doesn't hurt him, and then he falls to the bottom of the ocean and then he walks out of the ocean, and like, you know, like they wanted like all of that stuff.
Well, one thing that bothered me was that I felt like it was kind of a weird like little blip in the world building because there's just a prison like out in the middle of the ocean when what the world is like a bunch of moving places that don't get along with each other.
I don't know. I don't disagree. I'm not saying it. I don't think it didn't really make a lot of sense, but I think that's why they did it.
Why they do it that way. Sure. In the book, Shrike actually like walks himself into London where he knows that he'll be like captured and experimented on because he wants to find Hester so badly, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there was a dramatic way to do that. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I honestly also thought Shrike was pretty uninteresting looking.
Yeah.
Like, he just looked like a Terminator with green eyes.
He really did. He wasn't particularly
Yeah, which, like,
interesting.
given his description in the book, which I thought was pretty, like, gross and chilling, I thought they had a really missed opportunity there to do something cool.
I think they could have done more. I think he looked okay in the movie, but I think he did look a little too Terminator-y looking. But
it was the gaunt face and,
Yeah, I thought it worked okay, and I thought not having it to compare to the book description, I thought that I did think, well, he looks a little like Terminator, but I still like his character was effective enough for me overall that I thought the character design worked while being a little derivative. I guess.
Yeah, it is a little derivative. I made this note like halfway through the movie. I just felt like the dynamic between everyone in the movie was so like slightly altered from what it was in the book that it was a little like jarring to me. Like Tom and Hester's relationship I felt like progressed really quickly.
I always feel that way about every movie ever. I can't watch movies anymore because TV's ruined movies for me, but yeah.
And then Anna Fang like knows Hester and like knew her mom, which is not the case in the book. Yeah. And I felt like they were making Hester into like the savior girl or whatever the trope is called.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And then like I have a note again about Kate and Bevis. I was like, what's even happening with them? Because they have like a bunch of adventures and like fall in love and they have their own like story, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah,
that wasn't in the movie.
No. They do a couple things together and then he disappears.
One thing that they do together where they meet is she goes into the deep gut, like way, way down in the bowels of London. And I was disappointed that that was cut because that scene was brutal. And it really showed how awful this quote unquote civilization was. Because they have like prisoners working down there. And there's like a giant vat of literal shit.
Oh, yeah.
So and they have them like waiting around in this. And they talk about how they're trying to figure out how to make food out of it. But the prisoners keep dying when they feed it to them. And they're like, oh, well.
I just remembered I lied about what my favorite steampunk thing is. Because I just had two things just occurred in my brain at once here. You're describing that moment and it made me think of something. And it made me think of another thing. First thing it made me think of, well, the second thing it made me realize is I lied about what my favorite steampunk thing is. My favorite steampunk thing is Snowpiercer.
Oh, hey, you're right.
Snowpiercer is absolutely steampunk. First thing it made me realize that led to that second thought is holy shit, remake this movie and make Bong Joon-ho direct.
Yeah, let him do it. Give it to him.
It's right up his alley. This is Snowpiercer mixed with the class. Well, not that Snowpiercer doesn't have tons of class criticism and all that sort of stuff, but like mixed
this is Snowpiercer, but they're
Parasite.
In cities instead of a train.
It's just like Parasite and Snowpiercer like rolled into like one movie, mixed with a little bit of like absolutely. I was as soon as I was like, holy shit, he would make this movie infinitely better.
Yeah.
Oh, why is that not a thing?
Now I'm disappointed.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. He needs to make this movie. That would have been incredible. It would have been incredible. Anyways, go watch Snowpiercer. It's the better version of this, pretty much.
Yeah, so the deep gut is like a lot of the shit that goes on in like the worst parts of Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
Like some similar stuff.
Yeah, that's what made me think about it, yeah.
Another thing that the movie skips is that Tom and Hester hang out with some pirates for a while. Not the fun kind of pirates.
Oh.
There is kind of like, there's like a lighter moment to that because the captain of the pirate ship, like the reason that he doesn't just like kill them or sell them into slavery is because he wants to become a gentleman. And Tom is from London, so he wants Tom to like teach him manners and like how to talk good and stuff.
Gotcha.
But they're not nice pirates. And I thought it was a shame then that was cut because it's through that plot line with the pirates that Tom finally starts to realize that municipal Darwinism is shitty and that London isn't actually better than any of these small scavenger towns and pirates and things, that they're actually doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So many missed opportunities.
So many missed opportunities. All right, so let's talk about the ending. The last half of this movie is like a different story.
Yeah.
They completely abandon Kate and Bevis's plotline, which means that we see basically none percent of how horrible London actually is. Like you said, they make it about a couple of bad apples rather than something that's systemic and gross and has been going on for thousands of years.
Yep.
Which is just a great message. It's the best message.
Yep.
And then they actually use the weapon to almost bring the wall down, and Hester has this like kill key hidden in her necklace when what London is supposed to destroy itself. The weapon like malfunctions and it backfires on them and they destroy themselves, and that is the whole point. For fuck's sake, that's the whole point.
It absolutely is the whole point.
They destroy themselves.
Does like all of London die, or
it's implied that all of London dies? Yeah.
Does like Kate and Bevis die?
Yeah, everybody dies in this book.
Oh shit!
And like at the end, they're like Tom and Hester get away on the airplane, and they're like, do you think anybody survived down there? And they're like, and Tom's kind of like thinking to himself, like comforting himself with thoughts of like, oh, maybe some of them made it. But you know, probably not.
Holy shit, that's wild. You know who would have done that? Bong Joon-ho would have fucking done that. You fucking kidding me? That's exactly how this movie would have ended. Oh, that's
everybody dies.
So disappointing.
I know.
Oh, God, that would have been incredible.
Because they fuck with this power that is bad, and they want to use it anyway, and they don't understand it, and they don't know how to control it, and they destroy themselves.
Yeah, see, that's the problem here, is that this movie has the guts in the beginning of a fun YA adventure film, but the book turns it around at the end and goes, nope, all these like really deep messages about colonialism and systemic class disparity and like all of this terrible shit, and London eats itself and dies because of all of this horrible systemic fucking grime that has been festering within our civilization for 1,000 years or whatever. And the movie was like, well, but what if not that? What if good girl save day?
What if just kill bad guy?
What if bad guy die happy ending?
Everybody happy.
Because we want to make, because we like this world, you know, because we think it could be the next big movie series. And that is wildly disappointing. It's wildly disappointing. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Especially it's wildly disappointing that Peter Jackson would be, not that I'm saying it's surprising necessarily, but it's disappointing that he would go that direction. Because he wrote, he was involved. It was him and his Fran, I think it's his partner or whatever, who like writes on it, and somebody else. People.
This movie took the coward's way out.
Oh, absolutely.
And now the coward's way.
I will give benefit of the doubt, maybe, that who knows with studio powers and wanting sequels and wanting their, you can't, maybe the first treatment came back and the ending was like the book, and the studio was like, absolutely not. Are you kidding me? So I would say I don't know, but that's disappointing.
Yeah. How's that sequel working out for you guys?
Yeah.
Get that sequel? Get it?
Yeah. All right, that was it for Better in the Book. Let's go ahead and talk about the few things that were better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
All right, so I have a couple things that the movie did that I liked. I thought that starting with like a little mini prologue was interesting, to kind of set up...
Very on brand for Peter Jackson.
Yes. Kind of set up a few things about the world so that the audience can jump in a little bit better.
I think they could have done more with it, though, honestly.
No, I agree.
Because I have a note about that later. I think that was the movie was lacking even more of that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that should have been as long and as in-depth as the Lord of the Rings prologue. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? In the first movie. that just kind of explains everything that's going on and where
And
we're
then
at.
just have Kate Blanchett
Yeah,
read
and
it.
just have Kate Blanchett
For
do
no
it.
reason that's explained, just
Don't
have
care.
her do it.
Don't care. Just have her do it. Hugo Weaving even says a line like, the world's changing.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay. Fuck you.
I also thought it was interesting to start in the city that London eats instead of the other way around, because the book starts in London.
Yeah.
Which I think works for different reasons.
Yeah.
But it kind of like set me up hoping that this would have more commentary on like colonialism, and then that didn't pan out.
No.
But I thought that was a fun choice, an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I also liked the way that the movie interpreted the mechanics of the cities and like the way that they moved around.
Yeah, really
was a
neat.
lot of fun.
It was
and
super cool.
The book really gives you like very little to go on there, which I totally get. I wouldn't want to write a description of that.
No.
Totally understand. But it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I read don't think I had it in the prequel, but they like, when they were developing all of these cities and stuff, they like went in and like 3D modeled the entire city so that they knew exactly how, like, where all the different layouts were of the like London and everything, and they like went really in depth, and you can tell when you watch it, they went really in depth with like how these cities worked and operated and all the machinery and like the layouts, and it was really cool. And that's the part, like I said early in the film, that's the most fascinating and the most sort of enjoyable about the film, and I'll talk more about it in a few minutes.
I do love a blunderbuss.
Yeah,
gotta love a blunderbuss. Speaking of Anna Fang, she had a pretty sweet wing tattoo across her back.
Oh yeah, she did.
And then I thought her airship, the Jenny Hanover, and then Airhaven, which was the city up in the sky.
Yeah,
were
Cloud
both,
City.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I thought they were both pretty cool looking.
Yeah.
Lots of cool looking stuff in
Oh
this.
yeah, the design and the set design or production design and everything was top notch. Which you come to expect. It's Weta Workshops.
Yeah,
it's Peter Jackson's crew. You absolutely would expect nothing less from that.
Maybe we'd hire a few more writers.
Yeah,
but you know, I liked that we got more of Shrike's backstory. It's kind of alluded to in the book that like Hester kind of muses, like, I think maybe he can remember some things sometimes. But I liked that we got to see some of that.
Yeah. Like her and his interactions and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So even though the movie leaves out dog,
I had a feeling this was going to be your note.
I demand dog, but I am glad that I didn't have to watch dog die.
Yeah.
Because dog dies in the book, dog gets shot. And I am glad that I didn't have to watch that, but I still demand dog.
They changed so many other things. They could have had dog and just not had dog die.
Yeah, right?
Nobody else died. Why would dog die? That would have been the one thing that kept the same, just to spite you.
I know.
Dog would have been in the movie and they still would have killed it even though everybody else lives.
Damn
All
it.
right, that was it for Better in the Movie. Let's talk about what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
So we had Valentine pushing Tom down the garbage chute to keep his secrets from being revealed.
Yeah.
The movie nailed that sequence.
Cool.
Anna Fang pretty much nailed her. She's stone cold badass.
Yes, she is.
And Shrike's collection of dolls and wind-up toys, that's a thing straight out of the book.
His, like, does the book talk about, because I thought that was a cool, I don't know, a little bit of writing and sort of characterization thing, is that they, Hester sort of muses on the fact that why she that Shrike is a collector of things, and you said he does collect things, but that he's a collector of things and that he collects like broken and you know, discarded things because something, I don't remember exactly what she says, but it's just something about him and how, I can't remember the line.
I liked something about like him seeing himself.
Yeah, in
that
stuff.
Yeah, I don't think they explicitly discuss it like that, but it's kind of implied.
Okay, I thought that was.
She talks about how he likes like the dolls and the wind-up toys and things like that.
Cool. All right, and that was it. That was it for the movie. Nailed it.
Pretty much.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about a few odds and ends before we get to the final verdict. Anna Fang looks like a straight-up Matrix character
Yeah.
in this movie.
She,
And I mean, no, she looks straight like her description does in the book,
yeah.
so...
She doesn't look like anyone else in this movie,
No,
though.
that's the thing, is that she, like, looks nothing like anybody else. She straight up looks like they plucked a Matrix character out and was like, slap, like, the glasses, the long red trench coat, like, the haircut, everything about her. It's just like... Wait a second. Did she unplug from the Matrix into this world? Like, what is happening? Yeah.
Towns eating towns. We're really taking colonialism to a new symbolic level here.
I mean, it's about as overt as symbolism
towns
gets.
Literally eating towns.
It's literally about as overt as you can make symbolism in a thing. But, you know, it works.
It does.
it does work.
Too bad the movie doesn't comment on it, but you know it works.
I do wonder if the movie was initially going to go lean harder into that, because we get those moments early in the movie where they, like, when they're chasing down the ship, there's deliberate, where they're chasing down the smaller cities and stuff, there's deliberate shots of all of the London people, at least all the higher, like the upper class London people, sitting on top of the city, watching them run down these little cities and like cheering with bloodlust. Yeah. And it feels like the movie's trying to say something there, but then it's never addressed again.
I do wonder, like you were saying, maybe studio, maybe rewrites, because there was another shot in the beginning that gave me hope that they were going to comment on stuff, which was when the little Bavarian city or whatever gets like chopped up. Yeah. And you see like it has like the eagle or the griffin or whatever on the outside, and it just kind of like gets crumbled up into the engines. Yeah. And, like, London literally consumes it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, again, it's a bit of that, like, having your cake and eating it too, of like, oh, look, we're doing a symbolism, and then but not following through on any of this commentary. And I do wonder if, you know, who knows? Maybe we could do some research and figure out, maybe there are interviews or something. Or maybe not, because Peter Jackson wants to keep working. I don't know. Like, it's Peter Jackson. I don't think they're going to like stop. He made like the most successful movie franchise of all time. I don't think anybody's going to stop giving him money.
No,
a couple more of these they might, but
I feel like he'd rather we forget this one happened.
Yeah,
so.
But I just would be really interested to see if maybe it was like, oh, we want, you know, even if he maybe talks about it coyly or something somewhere about like, you know, it didn't quite end how we wanted it to, or, you know, it went a different direction than we were hoping. You know, maybe there's something about that, because it does feel like early on that it leans much harder into some of that commentary, and then it just the rug gets pulled out from underneath it at the end of the film, and it's interesting. I will say that like over halfway through this movie, I was like, you know, my inner 13-year-old self is here for this movie. Like it's lacking a fair bit of like narrative cohesion in sort of that department, but it's super fun. The performances were all really good, especially like Hugo Weaving. I think was dynamite in this movie. And then the aesthetic and the world building, like we mentioned, are just like,
it's there,
as good as it gets. I have a critique a little bit later that I want to talk about in terms of the direction, but the rest of the movie is just like, other than the script and the direction, I thought were just about as good as it gets. And I was like, I can see how if 13-year-old me had been seeing this movie in theaters, this would have been my favorite movie for at least like a good few months. You know what I mean? Like I would have been like, oh, it's fucking amazing.
There were a couple moments in this movie that made me like kind of laugh to myself. Yeah. One of them was when we were coming out of Hester's flashback to living with Shrike, and it like faded from the robot mask to her face. Yeah.
It was a little,
okay, guys.
It was a little cheesy. I didn't hate it, but it was not yeah. It wasn't great, I'll say. But it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I thought it was kind of funny how some of the names in this, in at least in the movie, and I'm assuming in the book, were a little on the nose. Or at least I thought it was kind of, because like, so am I wrong? First one, and I could be wrong about this, is Hester Shaw, isn't Hester the name of the main character in The Crucible? Isn't it Hester? Are
you thinking of the Scarlet Letter? Yeah. Yes, that's Hester Prynne.
Yeah.
There might be a Hester in the Crucible, but I really don't remember.
I was thinking of the Scarlet Letter, and I was thinking there was potentially a connection there. But more so, I thought it was funny that in the movie at least, the thing that Hester's mom finds that causes Hugo Weaving to kill her and take it, because it contains the final piece of the key to unleash chaos upon the world, is this like literal box, and her mom's name is Pandora.
It's a little on the nose.
I was like, okay, all right, you want to take another? All right, fine. Like even just like a slight tweak on that name or something. I don't know. No, Pandora. All right, she's got a box. Cool. All right, great. It's gonna unleash chaos. Okay, cool, great, fine, sure, whatever you wanted.
So, did you notice that when our anti-tractionist heroes, Anna Feng and her cohort of attractive people, attractive
aviatrix piratey guys,
when they fly to the shield wall, they fly through a hole in it to get in.
I think they land in the wall, don't they?
I thought they went like through a hole.
Maybe they do fly
and
through
they
a
go
hole.
into. I was like, why are they flying through it?
Maybe they're okay. That is a little silly. But my thought is that maybe that's like what you're required to do. And if you try to fly over it, they just shoot you down.
Yeah, maybe
or
it's
something
a
like that. Like maybe
measure.
it's like they make you fly through there so they can kind of like look at you. I don't even know. I mean, they know who they are because they're like they're part of this group.
Yeah,
like
the resistance.
Yeah, whatever. And then you're right, because I think they don't land in the wall, but there are ships that are just like docked in the wall in the movie, like their air fleet or whatever is like just in the wall, and so maybe that's why the hole's there. I don't know. Anyways, it's a little silly.
It's like I was writing a note and then I looked up and they were like going through a hole in the wall instead of just. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah. I thought, speaking of the anti-tractionists, I thought that the movie really could have used some more sort of backstory on the whole world. I mentioned earlier about the prologue needing more. I needed more about like when they're setting up the beginning. Like the prologue mainly talks about like how the world was destroyed and now how it's reborn and there's like these big roaming cities. I wanted more about like how it was reborn and there's these roaming cities and then there's this other faction, there's this other part of the world that's like
not
roaming cities and that they're at war or that they're, you know what I mean? Like, because we find out later that tons of cities, or at least dozens of cities have tried to break through the wall and have been destroyed or whatever in the process. At least in the movie, that's, there's like this graveyard of old destroyed vehicles or whatever out in front of the wall. And so I felt like the movie really could have expanded upon sort of that mythos of like, or not mythos, but like that lore of what was going on, so that I felt a little more like I understood like the stakes a little bit more, which I also think is another big problem that the movie had, was that so London is trying to break through this wall and destroy the wall to get to all this whatever's behind it. The only thing we see behind it is in the last 15 minutes of the movie, and it's that one city. I have no stakes for like who these people are or what, you know what I mean? Like even just a quick moment where like when they're pulling up, where we see like families and kids running through the streets, and you know what I mean? Like give me something other than just like it's a big city over there. Like I don't see anybody other than the military people that we see in the wall. Like I just needed some, like I felt like they're just like, you care about these people because they're the other people that they're gonna destroy. Like I felt like it just was lacking stakes by not giving us anything about what was going on the other side of the wall. Just sort of ignores everything over there until they show up at the end to like be in the final battle. It's just like, oh, okay. I felt like we should have had it like throughout the movie a couple times where we're like checking in with them or seeing. I don't know. It just felt like a.
I mean, the book doesn't go like super more into detail, but there's also 3 more books in this series and like other like lore and short stories. Actually, you would probably like this.
I probably would. Yeah, I'm sure I would. Like I said, I enjoyed a lot about the movie and just
So I would imagine that if you read the other materials, those go more into like how we got from point A to point B and like more about like the static cities and that dynamic. And
Yeah.
my last note says, how much of this is left because I have literally stopped caring.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't stop caring, but I definitely stopped caring as much. My last note was that I think my main criticism of the film, apart from the writing choices at the end, and the thematic choice of London not destroying itself, and of the whole like one bad egg versus systemic problem, you know, that whole thing that we've talked about. Apart from that, my biggest problem is with the direction of this film, this guy's a better filmmaker than I will ever be. Christian Rivers, the guy who directed this, who's like, but he up until this point had been like a second unit and a split unit director and an assistant and an AD and that sort of thing, and it absolutely looks to me like a film shot by a second unit director, and that's pretty harsh shade, but also it's not a terrible looking movie, but it's so workmanlike. And I'm going to try to explain this in a way that makes sense to somebody who's not, and I'm not even as remotely versed in sort of in the art of cinematography as I probably should be. But what we don't get in this movie much of is like the beautiful tableaus, and not even tableaus, the beautiful, like, striking moments. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of big moments where the camera is looking at big soaring landscapes of like fiery cities and like all the like really impressive looking things, but they're not shot in a way that's cinematically interesting. We get like a bunch of very functional shots that you need in your movie, which is why why your second unit and stuff exists, is to go shoot all of these very functional sort of scene-to-scene shots that you need, but the movie lacks like a cohesive overall visual style. Mm-hmm. Like the world has a visual style. Like the world that exists has a very distinct visual style, but the film itself doesn't have a visual style. Compare it to something like before I even get to talking about like Lord of the Rings, compare it first to something like Thor Ragnarok, where Thor Ragnarok is a similar movie where the world has this very distinct style and look to it, because it's not steampunk, but it's because they're on they spend most of the movie on that alien planet, mm-hmm. or whatever, or
like the battle planet
or whatever, and it's very distinctive looking with like Jeff Goldblum's character and everything that's going on there, and then eventually at the end when they even get back to
Asgard
and the battles are all going on and stuff. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there's that one shot, and there's a bunch of them in Thor Ragnarok, but there's particularly that one shot that this movie doesn't have any of, and that's that shot where at the end of the movie Thor jumps out of Asgard towards all those people on the bridge, and it's that wide shot from the side, and Thor's like, it's like slow-mo and all the people are there and Thor's like lightning is striking him and it's the coolest looking thing you've ever seen. There's none of that in this movie. And that's just a very specific example. And like then compare it to something like Lord of the Rings, where so you have all of the same types of shots in Lord of the Rings that you have in this movie, but then you also get the shot like at the end of the Two Towers where Gandalf's riding down the hill, and you get that side that panoramic shot from the side right as he gets to the edge of the lip. And it's what I'm talking about is those shots in movies that you could take a screenshot of and hang on your wall like art.
Yeah.
This movie has like zero of those.
Yeah.
Like, as I was watching the movie, it became really apparent to me, like, all of a sudden, I was like, holy cow, this movie doesn't have a single shot. All the shots look nice, but it doesn't have a single shot that I'm like, wow, that's cool. I'm like, wow, that's some cool stuff in the shot, but mm-hmm. not, wow, that shot is cool. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the difference, I think. And then, like, even a very simple thing, like at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, that shot that's like the very first shot of, well, not the first shot in the movie, but after the prologue, it's like the first shot of Frodo leaning against the tree in the meadow.
Yeah.
Like, just that shot. You can just put that on your wall and you're like, oh, that's nice. There's none of that in this movie, and it's really interesting. And it's what made me the most, it's what stuck out to me the most by the end of the film, of like, oh yeah, that's why this guy shouldn't direct movies. or because it's just it lacks a cohesive visual style that really would make it something special. Yeah. And it's disappointing because it has so much else going on or going for it in terms of the filmmaking.
Yeah, in terms of like the visuals.
And everything.
And the design. I agree.
Yeah.
I lied. I actually have one more note. I wonder if they kept Kate alive at the end because they were expecting to get a sequel.
Yeah. That's also why they didn't show Hugo Weaving die. Yeah. Like, he probably died, but the thing stopped right as his little thing got kind of crunched. Maybe he didn't quite die. Maybe he's going to come back with robot legs or whatever. Like,
oof, how's that sequel working out? Because you know what killed everyone and has 3 sequels? The motherfucking book. Eat it.
Yeah, very true. All right, that's it. Let's go ahead and do it. It's time for the final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterwards.
So, unsurprisingly, I'm going to give this one to the book. I posted on my personal Twitter today as we're recording this, but yesterday as you're hearing it, that if you liked my takes on Miss Peregrine's and Percy Jackson, then you would probably like my take on this movie. I don't think Mortal Engines is as bad as either of those.
I will just to interject real quickly. I think it's a better movie than both of those. Like, just without having read the book, not talking about adaptation, I think it's a slightly better movie than both of those. So.
Yeah. And that there are a few things that I found pretty upsetting about this movie. One thing that bothered me was the sloppy integration of Kate and Bevis's plotline. The books follow them and Tom and Hester pretty equally because they're 2 sides of the same coin. Tom is unlearning what he's been taught from outside the city, and Kate is exposing the nasty things behind the curtain from the inside. And that allows for dramatic irony. Kate can uncover something, and then in the next chapter, we can see how not having that information affects Tom in real time. But instead of taking that and doing something interesting with it, the movie started on Kate and Bevis's story and then was like, nah. It's sloppy. Like, if you're not going to see it through, why are you even doing it? Why are you even doing it? Why include it if you're not going to see that through? The other thing, we've talked about this is the big one, is that the movie largely ignores the themes of the book. The book has a lot to say about how we treat each other, how we treat the environment in the name of progress and putting ourselves first, as well as how bad we are at learning from history. I would say that the book has slightly fewer specific things to say about colonialism, but there's definitely an anti-colonial message within the book. And I feel like the movie pays a small amount of lip service to these ideas, to the ideas of anti-colonialism, environmentalism, learning from history, but it's all just surface level. And the themes about how we treat each other really get lost. The movie doesn't show how London operates and how truly awful it is, nor does it show the similarities between those who are doing municipal Darwinism, quote unquote, wrong, the pirates and scavengers, and those who are doing it, quote, right. All of that is completely lost. There's no commentary on it. So to sum it up, the book told a cool story while also saying some really important stuff, and the movie looked cool.
There you go. That's your final verdict for Mortal Engines. The book was better. Katie, as always, our lovely listeners can support us on patreon.com/thisfilmislit. For $2, $5, or $15 a month, I think those are the levels. You could at $2 you get access to early access and an ad-free version of the show. We don't have ads yet, but we may one day. At $5, you get access to our bonus material, bonus content when we do movie reviews and all that sort of good stuff, and you get early access and all that stuff. And at the $15 level, you're our Academy Award-winning level patron, which means you get a whole bevy of the things before, but you also get priority access to recommendations, which is why we're doing this book, why we talked about Mortal Engines. One of our newest Academy Award winner patrons, Shelby Suderman, super fan of the show, recommended Mortal Engines, and so we did it. So if you really have something you would love to hear us talk about, go over to patreon.com/sosfilmislit, support us for $15 a month, and we will move your recommendation up towards the top of the list. We can't guarantee that we'll get to it right away, but we'll try to get to it as soon as possible. I think we just got another recommendation from one of our $15 patrons like a couple days ago, so we'll need to look into that one. And also try to limit it to books that are movies and not TV shows or that sort of thing, or like whole comic series or that Try to make it one book and one movie, or if you have a series of books that were turned into a series of movies, we can see about it. But head on over to Patreon and do that. That would be fantastic. Also, if you can't support us on Patreon, that's just fine. We still love you. You could do us another big favor by going to iTunes and giving us a 5-star rating and a review. That stuff's super helpful, and we love when you do that. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter, and we have a subreddit. I think that's all the social media. Katie, what is our next project?
So up next, we are going to foray away from young adult and children's fantasy, where we've been hanging out for a while.
Yep.
We're going to do something that I am really excited about.
Okay.
We're going to do Legally Blonde.
Oh my goodness. That's a book?
That's a book.
This happens every week. That's a book. Interesting. I've actually never seen Legally Blonde.
Really?
No, I've seen like, bits here and there on TV, but I've never like watched all of the movie. So I'm interested to see how I like it.
I'm interested to see how the book compares.
Yeah, that should be fun. So if you come back in 2 weeks' time, we'll be talking about Legally Blonde. In the meantime, you can come back in 1 week's time, and we'll do our preview episode for Legally Blonde. We'll have our fan follow-up polls for Mortal Engines, where you can make your voice heard by going to our social media, like I mentioned earlier. We'll have polls where you can leave feedback, vote for which one you liked more, the book or the movie, tell us why, and we'll read those comments on our prequel episode next Tuesday. And until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.